But first, we want to start with the biggest news development of the day. There is still no evidence the Trump campaign colluded with Vladimir Putin. Hundreds of journalists and criminal investigators, tens of millions of taxpayer dollars, more than a year of relentless searching that has basically shut the government down. In the end, nothing. But that doesn't mean we haven't learned a great deal about how our government actually works. We have. Just today, another trove of FBI text messages became public. Last night, the Senate released a criminal referral to the Justice Department against Christopher Steele. He's the shadowy author of the Trump dossier. So there's an awful lot going on. Here are some of the most significant developments in the last 24 hours. Now, you remember in the spring of 2016, President Obama was asked if the public could have confidence that his administration would never tamper with a criminal investigation. He responded unequivocally, quote, "I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI in any case, full stop, period." Well, that sounded definitive, and yet newly released FBI texts suggest that may be false. Just 5 months after Obama made that claim, FBI attorney Lisa Page texted senior agent Peter Strzok, with whom she was having an affair, to say this, quote, "POTUS wants to know everything we're doing." Now, keep in mind, at the time that Page wrote that, the Hillary Clinton investigation had been closed, but the investigation of Donald Trump had begun. The FBI clearly understood that President Obama was watching closely. That's the headline from today's batch of texts. There are many more texts on the way. Remember those 5 months of text messages that the FBI somehow lost? Well, they've somehow been found. The Department of Justice has them now. Congress is waiting to get them, so you can expect more revelations to come. Last night, as we said, the Senate Judiciary Committee released a redacted version of its criminal referral against dossier author Christopher Steele. It's a carefully written document, and it's packed with information. It got far less attention than the now famous Devin Nunes memo, but it may tell us much more. For example, the Senate memo released last night explains how Christopher Steele deliberately misled the FBI about the dossier he assembled. Steele told federal investigators he had not spoken to any media outlets about his research. In fact, he'd spoken to many of them, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Yahoo News, the New Yorker, and CNN. That's not forgetfulness. If this memo is accurate, Steele lied to the FBI, and that's a federal crime. But maybe more important, thanks to Steele's deception, the FBI relied on a Yahoo News report to verify the dossier, when in fact the Yahoo story was itself simply citing the dossier. Circular. It would be pretty funny if it weren't so incompetent. Yet, and here's the striking thing, even after the FBI learned that Steele was lying to them, they continued to use his dossier to justify spying on Carter Page. As the Senate memo makes clear, there are only 2 possible explanations for this. Either the FBI lied to the FISA court by saying Steele had not spoken to journalists before October of 2016, that's 1, or 2, Steele lied to the FBI and is therefore a discredited source. Neither one is good. Both are bad. And there's more. The Senate memo describes Steele as a sloppy and reckless researcher, an intense partisan with passionately left-wing views about American politics, who included unsolicited, unverified allegations in his assessments. Apparently, some of those allegations came from Hillary Clinton's own associates. It seems odd, since the Clinton campaign, of course, was helping to pay for the dossier in the first place, but there you go. As the memo puts it in a moment of dry understatement, all of this, quote, raises additional concerns about Steele's credibility. Yeah, that's for sure. In fact, it's hard to see how any fair person could disagree with that sentence. And yet, for some reason, the FBI seemed to have no concerns about Steele's credibility. His work, the dossier, appears to form the basis of this entire investigation. If there's more evidence out there that points to collusion during the 2016 campaign, we haven't seen it. We haven't even heard whispers of it. And in a moment like this, when leaks are the coin of the realm in Washington, when they're the primary way people communicate information, it's hard to imagine we haven't heard of any other evidence. So maybe there isn't any. Is the Steele dossier the entire thing, all they've got? The Steele dossier seems to be the reason we're having this conversation in the first place. That does not inspire confidence. Congressman Matt Gaetz is a Republican representing the state of Florida, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Good to be on, Tucker.
So I want to ask you about a story that we had last night. The Daily Mail broke that Congressman Schiff, Adam Schiff of Burbank, California, basically the lead on the Russia probe in the House among Democrats, was suckered in a prank phone call into believing that this Ukrainian group had naked pictures of a Russian model Trump was purportedly having an affair with. He then dispatched a researcher or an aide on the committee to call back the number and set up a document drop at the Ukrainian embassy. That seems like a significant story. It's not being covered today. Do you think that's a meaningful thing to know?
Absolutely, Tucker. And Adam Schiff should step aside as the lead Democrat on the Intelligence Committee as a consequence of this scandal. While our FBI and Justice Department were suffering through an Obama nation, an Obama influence with these attempts to influence investigations, you had Adam Schiff off playing footsies with the Ukrainians, trying to get naked pictures of Donald Trump. Adam Schiff has gone from someone with oversight responsibilities to an actual principal in this investigation, engaging with the Ukrainians, and I think for better objectivity, he ought to step aside.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm really trying to be open-minded because maybe Trump collaborated with Putin. I mean, I'm waiting for the evidence, but the allegation appears to be this, that Trump's associates, including one of his children, spoke to a Russian lawyer in an effort to get damaging information on the other campaign, on a political rival, Hillary Clinton. Adam Schiff has basically admitted that he sought damaging campaign on a political rival from a foreign government. Why is that different?
Well, and even more analogous would be Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions was talked into recusing himself because of a handshake in a greeting line. And here you've got Adam Schiff actually engaging with Ukrainians to try to dig up dirt on the president with seemingly no interest in whether or not the information is true or false or doctored. And so if you use the same standard that's been applied to Republicans to Adam Schiff, he should have no role on the Intelligence Committee as a lead on this issue. And I think that if you look at his credibility with the American people, it's eroded. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago, Adam Schiff was saying if we released the Devin Nunes memo, there would be a national security catastrophe. That's been proven to be false. And so time and again, he's lost credibility. And I think the fact that he actively engaged with these Ukrainian principals, the fact that he goes on Russia Today, the Russian-sponsored television channel, to talk about our intelligence system, certainly indicates that Adam Schiff should step aside.
But that's a level of hypocrisy that would really embarrass most people. I mean, if you're calling for a president to leave office on the basis of charges, standards that you yourself violate, wouldn't you look yourself in the mirror and say, that's too hypocritical, I can't continue to do
Well, and what does Nancy Pelosi think? I mean, while Nancy Pelosi was calling for Devin Nunes to be removed as the intelligence chairman, even though there was an ethics committee investigation that cleared Devin Nunes, that dispositively found that he did nothing wrong, here you've got Adam Schiff clearly engaging in shady tactics, and Nancy Pelosi spent her 8 hours on the floor with a different rambling narrative.
So, really quick, do you, I mean, are we out on a limb suggesting that the dossier seems to be the core document that spurred this investigation? Is there other evidence that you know of?
I've seen no other evidence, and the reason you know the dossier is the core piece of evidence is because they had to have Christopher Steele go plant news articles to validate the dossier. So the very author of the dossier has to go create and manufacture other facts to validate the dossier because it cannot validate itself. It has no mechanism to be proven true because it's all false.
It's like a freshman philosophy class. You're exactly right, though. Congressman, thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Stephen Cohen is Professor Emeritus of Russian Studies and Politics at NYU and Princeton, a contributing editor of The Nation, maybe the most famous Russia scholar in the United States. He joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on. So, am I missing? I just want to be absolutely clear because I think this helps inform how we see this investigation. Are you aware of any other evidence at all of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government other than the dossier?
No, none, but there are two documents that became the foundational sources for the Kremlin-Gate narrative. It was first the Steele dossier, which surely informed the so-called intelligence community assessment in January of 2017. We were told that was the judgment of 17 intelligence agencies. It now turns out to have been the judgment of no intelligence agencies, just a few guys at the top. So that is all that's ever been produced, and it's not credible.
What about, I mean, we know that that dossier was at least part of the rationale for the warrant that allowed the feds to spy on Carter Page. Do you think that other people in Trump's orbit during the campaign were spied on by the federal government?
Oh, I don't know. In the article I just published in The Nation, I asked that question. We need to find out. I mean, why did they, for example, get a warrant on Carter Page, who, on the very surface of it, is no threat to American national security, and then on Paul Manafort? We might assume they did it because they thought these two men would be close, even in the same room with Donald Trump, and wanted to surveil him. But let me just make one point, Tucker. What interests me is not who paid for the dossier. We know it was the Clinton campaign.
Right.
But where Steele got this information. And in the article I write, I suggest that it's highly unlikely he got it from his so-called connections in the Kremlin. Now, there's a big attempt underway to rehabilitate Steele. On the front page of the Washington Post today, there's a story that portrays him as a kind of character out of a John le Carre spy novel. And he may well be an anguished man without a purpose in life, retired for some reason at a very early age, and for hire. So this is the guy who now enters our life and is used. And the larger question that comes to my mind, but you know the answer better than I do, is how many branches of government do we actually have? Well, I was taught we had 3. But what's been going on above with the intelligence services, and not only the FBI, raises a question if there's a 4th branch of government that's influencing not only our politicians, but because they were leaking to the media, what we voters think when we go to vote.
Do you think that the information in the dossier, and you're a credible person to ask this of, do you think it's credible? I mean, do you think it's real? Do you think it came from real sources? It can be verified. It hasn't yet been, but do you think it will be, or is it made up?
Well, we could, we have to deconstruct it. Some of it is true because he got it from open sources, from newspapers. I mean, was it really a mystery? When I was in Moscow over the years, I knew Donald Trump wanted to build a hotel in Moscow. It was widely discussed. It was in the papers. You need to hire a guy for the money they paid Steele to tell you that. We knew, for example, that the oil company that purportedly was going to pay Carter Page zillions of dollars if he would remove sanctions, that had actually been placed by the European Union, not the Americans. It's a preposterous tale, but it was known in Russia, in the newspapers, that they were going to privatize 15% of that oil company. So you could have sat wherever it was, Steele or his associates lived, and read the Russian press and gotten about 50% of that information in the dossier.
A lot of our intelligence comes from newspapers. That's the shocking truth, as you well know. Professor, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Well, Robin Biro is a former regional director for Barack Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. He joins us. Hey, Robin, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Tucker. It's good to be back.
I think it's important to have an open mind. I've never been a friend of Russia or anything like that, but this has gone on over a year, and it's prevented government from doing the things that government ought to do, this investigation. And so I think it's fair as a citizen to say, what do you got? Like, what's this about? You're accusing people of treason, betraying their country. And the only thing that I've come up with, in looking at it pretty carefully, is this dossier, which is, prima facie flawed. Is there anything else at the bottom of this?
Well, yes, you know as well as I do that to obtain a FISA warrant, you have to have at least 10 forms of evidence, of corroborating evidence. That was just one of them. And, Comey was correct to call parts of it salacious. We don't know whether that investigation is still ongoing. We haven't been privy to that. And there's 5 other investigations.
Right. Tons of that's all we do in Washington is stage investigations. Right. And look, at a certain point, you think, that's fine, I get it, the allegations out there, get to the bottom of it. But this is the basis of a partisan war right now, and at some point the rest of us have a right to, what exactly are you talking about? So you got the dossier. What else is there? Can you point to a single other fact that suggests actual collusion between the Trump campaign and the government of Vladimir Putin?
Now, you're a smart man. You know as well as I do that FBI investigations do not work like that. We are not privy to ongoing information from those investigations.
No, but there are congressional investigations.
We know that people have been charged. We know that there have been charges.
But none of the charges have anything to do with collusion with the Russian government. I mean, you had 2 people charged for things they did long before the campaign and 2 others charged for lying to the FBI. I mean, and let's be real, we both know what that means. It's not a real thing. So let's... honestly, the whole leadership of your party is accusing people of betraying their country. Do we have any evidence that's real? Any?
I want to go back to the very first thing that you said, struck a chord with me, because as a veteran, I had the same oath to uphold the Constitution that our federal agents do. So they're just doing their jobs to uphold our way of democracy.
But I'm not attacking our federal investigations. I'm not attacking them. I'm talking about our leaders in Congress, our elected leaders, who have gone way out on a limb, accusing people they disagree with politically of working for a foreign and hostile nation. And I think now, after a year, more than a year, it's fair of me to ask, what are you talking about? Do you have any evidence that that's true? And as I said, the only